Matt Green, CRO of Sales Assembly, all the way from Chicago. Welcome to the Sales Podcast, man. How the heck are you?
I'm good. Wes. How about yourself?
I'm good. So I'm glad we made some time here. You carved out of your busy schedule. You've got some cool software here. We'll talk a little bit about it, but elevated learning and development for GTM teams, go to market, account-based marketing. All right. Let's start there, shall we? We're going to get into your story a little bit, but what the hell, man? GTM, ABM, isn't this just like a bunch of corporate speak for like, just be curious and just do a damn good job of being a salesperson?
Yeah, it's a lot of acronyms to pack into one website, right? It's all about the economy of words. But yeah, I mean that, in its most simplistic form, that is what we do. We teach B2B tech salespeople how to be better B2B tech salespeople, and teach B2B tech post-sales professionals how to be better at their roles, which, and you alluded to a moment ago, isn't the most complicated thing in the world. Simple, but not easy. That's why we exist.
Yeah. So you chose to focus on tech. Is it different? Is it different from selling business insurance or commercial real estate?
Yeah, the interesting question. That there are going to be a lot of similarities. I mean, I am a big believer, as I don't want to make a presumption, maybe you are too, that by and large sales is sales. The reason why we focused on tech and why we continue to focus on tech to this day, 6 years after launching Sales Assembly, is because when you take a look, just continuing with that thread of sales being sales, tech sales across the board, regardless of the product that you sell or who you sell it to, is very similar. So whether you're selling a software solution to finance professionals, technology professionals, sales professionals, whatever the case may be, when you check under the hood and you look at how a lot of the organizations that we do, how they do this kind of stuff, it's pretty consistent from company to company. The account executives need to be good at storytelling. The customer success managers need to be good at identifying upsell, cross-sell opportunities. So we saw so many more similarities just within the B2B tech ecosystem. That's really what prompted us to focus on this specific segment of the market rather than just salespeople in general.
Mm-hmm. You were in this space as a salesperson first, right?
Correct. Yeah.
How did you make that famous pivot? I mean, launching a company is hard. I mean, you've been at this, 6 years on your own?
Yeah. July will be 6 years.
All right. So 2017. So walk me through that. Were your co-founder, were y'all at the same company or were y'all just friends?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. We had actually met serving on the board of the same charity. I think it was back in 2012, 2013. And when I joined an early stage tech startup here in Chicago, my partner Jeff was one of the first people that I brought on board to help work alongside myself and the team there. So we worked together for about a year and a half. Our jobs were essentially to build sales teams across the country for this company. But then, like a lot of other individuals are experiencing today, 6, 7 years later, we were impacted by a reduction in force at the company and found ourselves out of jobs. That in many ways, of course, there's obviously a lot more to it, but in many ways that was, a big part of the genesis behind my partner Jeff coming up with the idea for Sales Assembly and us launching it back in 2017.
So he got the idea. So there y'all are, right? Like in the Air Force, right? There it was.
Yeah.
Got to do your hands, right? You're out of work. It's 2016. Y'all had the idea?
Yeah, right around there.
And it took about a year to launch.
Yeah, there were a couple different iterations. He and I, we had kicked around a few ideas after finding ourselves, again, just unemployed and trying to figure out what the hell to do, we knew that there were, just given the experience that we had walked out of, we knew that there was an opportunity within B2B tech companies, and specifically within the sales and go-to-market functions of B2B tech companies. So we kicked around, one or two different ideas that never really got off the ground prior to launching Sales Assembly. But one of the things that we kept going back to, and that my partner Jeff kept going back to, is, as we were trying to kick around some of these ideas, what we had done is set up a really informal bi-monthly coffee meeting with the heads of sales of what at the time were other early stage Chicago B2B tech companies, companies like G2 or Sprout Social or Active Campaign, companies that today in some cases are big publicly traded companies. And if not, they're doing hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue and have reached, a significant level of scale. But back then, we were all just sales leaders at early stage companies, and we would come together every other month and we would just chat about what we're working on and what we're struggling with in the capacity of our jobs. And it didn't take us long to realize that, again, regardless of the product that all these sales leaders to and who they sold it to, they were always complaining about the exact same stuff, right? It was always a struggle to find other peers of theirs to connect with. It was a struggle to train up their business development teams or their sales teams, to the extent that they needed to. So that, again, was another big genesis behind Sales Assembly, which today provides, as we kind of alluded to before, skill development for the go-to-market teams, while also layering in a community for go-to-market professionals, both leaders and individual contributors, to connect and collaborate and exchange ideas and best practices.
So why is more training needed, right? We've got Sandler, we've got Miller Hyman, we've got Chet Holmes, we've got Zig Ziglar.
Yeah.
We've got the Challenger sale. We've got spin selling. I mean, come on, man. Can't I just read a book? I mean, I can go to YouTube, right? I mean, Alex Hormozy makes a lot of videos. What?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a great question. Believe it or not, it's one that we get a lot, where we are going to be different in the market compared to some like Challenger, Sandler, Miller, Hyman. We don't deal with methodology, right? Challenger, they're going to come in, they're going to set up like a sales process, right? Here's what you do to impact each of these stages as a prospect is going throughout, the sales cycle. What Sales Assembly does is we handle what we like to believe is the stuff that, might be simple, but is not easy, right? Training the account executives on how to be better storytellers, or, more effective negotiation tactics, or training the frontline leaders on, hey, here's how you put somebody on a performance improvement plan in an appropriate manner, which is something, if you're a leader, that's something that A, you're going to have to do at one point or another throughout your career. And B, is also something that probably in your history, in your career, no one has ever actually sat you down and taught you how to teach or taught you how to do. Right. So that's really where Sales Assembly comes into play, is we're providing all the day-to-day skill development that all these companies, regardless of size, we work with small companies that have go-to-market teams of 10, 15, 20 people. We work with big companies like Intuit and LinkedIn. And the common thread that connects all of these companies, regardless of size, is they know that they need to spend more of their time training their AEs on how to be better storytellers, or training their CSMs on, how to perform more effective QBRs. They just don't have time to do it. Why do they not have time to do it? Because they're spending their time building and implementing Challenger, or training on, the messaging around the new product that they rolled out. That's really the gap that Sales Assembly was built to fill in the market.
So, because I mean, you have a sales leader and they're juggling the CRM. They are probably fighting with marketing, probably fighting with operations, probably fighting with finance. And they got some laggards on the sales team. They got some bulls in the China shop that are making it rain, but also bringing some pain with them. So are you kind of the oh, what's the phrase? Kind of the thread kind of to help them kind of pull all that together.
Yeah, in a sense, I'd say that the best way to think about sales assembly and what we do is partnering with us is like adding a dozen instructional designers and sales enablement managers onto your team that can either, if you're a really small early stage company and you don't have sales enablement infrastructure in place, we can be that infrastructure, right? Or if you're a larger company and you do have enablement infrastructure in place, we're just an extension of their team, because all we're doing over here day in and day out is just creating and facilitating training content that all these organizations either don't have the time or the inclination, or in some cases, the expertise to do.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to help piece this together, folks that are listening, because there's so many intangibles. I always say I sit like, if there's a Venn diagram of sales, marketing, and technology, like I sit right in the middle. I understand
Mhm.
sales, I understand marketing. I've sold CRMs now for 17 years, used them for 23, 24 years at least. But there are just having components, like they say, the sum or the whole is greater than the sum,
So, yeah.
right? It's like bringing everything together, boom, makes it mo better. But there's like a lot of silos in companies,
Yeah.
right? Is that fair to say? Like, are you helping like bring the silos together?
Yeah, in the sense, especially from a learning and development perspective, because yeah, you're exactly right. There are silos within company, and those silos do extend to how much time and effort is placed on training and developing teams. So what we see a lot of, and I'm sure you've probably seen this because this is pervasive across the ecosystem. A lot of training, a lot of effort built into onboarding new hires, right? You bring on board a new cohort of SDRs or BDRs. It's like, great, we got to make sure that these folks get up to speed. Once they are sort of up to speed, in air quotes, and it's like, okay, well, it's like out of sight, out of mind. I mean, they're already onboarded, right? And yeah, sure, occasionally we'll reinforce Challenger or Sandler, whatever methodology we might adhere to. And yeah, we'll provide them product market training, right? What we'll teach them about, this new feature benefit that we rolled out, but we're not necessarily going to improve their sales readiness, right? That's where a lot of companies are kind of missing the mark. And again, when you talk about silos, not only just within the new business development team, but sales, post-sales, revenue operations, sales enablement, individual contributors, and leadership, the lack of focus on creating a culture of sales readiness, and the byproduct of that is, to your point earlier, VPs of sales, they spend their time, setting up the CRM, and what else are they doing? Deal coaching, right? That's when they start spending their time and focus on actually coaching and training, is like, no, well, we got to get this one deal over the finish line. A big part of our thesis is making sure that organizations have the opportunity to make those investments in the front end on sales training, so that on the spot deal coaching becomes less and less of a requirement. Why is it less and less of a requirement? Because the sales teams are more effective at running the prospect through the sales cycle, so they don't need to bring in a VP of sales who just listened to the gong call and said like, hey, I got to get involved in this situation to make sure that this deal moves over the finish line.
Yeah. It is challenging, right? Because I could see somebody that they need this, but a lot of times they don't realize they need it until they've lost a big deal, right? They've gotten that bloodied nose. So they missed revenue, but now it's like, now you're telling me I got to add another layer, another tool, more training. What do you say to them if they're putting up those objections?
Yeah, rather than thinking about this as adding another tool, what we are going to be a good solution for is making sure that companies have the opportunity to provide the learning and development that they need, which not only is going to help increase win rates, but also it's going to help retain staff, right? Because especially now, not to paint with broad brushstrokes, but if you have a sales organization, it's going to be staffed by and large by millennial type talent. What are these folks most interested in from a motivation perspective? I mean, sure, money is going to be a big factor, but also, hey, is my company investing in me and my personal and professional development and success? So it is going to be a great solution to make sure that not only you're retaining the staff that you have, but you're making them more efficient. What is that going to do? It's going to make sure that you don't have the need to go out there and invest in more on the spot sales training, buy this or that or the other tool that might help, increase, motivation across the teams. That again is where we're really going to lean in. And, us Sales Assembly, to be clear, we're not a software solution. Although we are a tech-enabled platform, really what we're going to provide, again, is that day-to-day training and skill development that these companies know that they need, and usually traditionally would have to try to build internally by adding headcount in order to do so. By partnering with Sales Assembly, don't have to do that.
So are you weaving in, like if they're a Sandler shop or a Miller Hyman shop or whatever, does that get incorporated, or is it not even a thing? It's more like an internal processes that you're helping them create.
Yeah, it's for us, it's not even going to be a thing. We are completely agnostic when it comes to the different methodologies. Again, the way that we look at this is methodology, of course, is just going to be the stages in the sales process, right? But the competencies that make a BDR effective, that make an account executive effective, that make an account manager effective, those are going to be consistent from B2B tech company to company. Those are going to be the competencies that we spend our time training on.
So how much of Sales Assembly is like standard, like out of the box? If I go from company to company, and I log in, it's the same versus customizing for my company?
Yeah, so we don't do any customization. And, we like to think that there's a big benefit there, because the way that we deliver our training is going to be via one-to-many approach. So every week we're putting on as many as 3 live, virtual, but live professionally facilitated skill development courses. Just one example, about a week or 2 ago, we had a session that was built specifically for customer success managers and account managers on tactics that you could employ if your existing customers are ghosting you, right? So getting just hyper specific, that type of situation. In that training session, we had 170, 180 CSMs and account managers from the 200 different companies that we work with. They were there having the opportunity to not only learn from a facilitator of that session, but also learn from each other, right? Because they're all there to learn about the solutions to the same problem, because they're all dealing with the same problem day to day. So we give them that opportunity for that peer connectivity and collaboration, so that, again, they could exchange ideas and best practices in real time by weaving the community that we built of nearly 7,000 professionals across the 200 different companies that we work with into the structured training that we provide. That's what makes what we do much more impactful than, just a pre-canned, on-demand session, or coming in and doing something just for your specific company one time, and then backing away and saying, okay, Wes, well, now you can take it from here.
Right. So, but I mean, you'll take that training, like why are leads ghosting you, and archive it, right? So if I join the company a year later, I could go review that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. But the ongoing keeps it more timely, more relevant. Like, are you doing surveys? Like, how do you know what topics to address?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. One of the other things that we do in addition to the training is we have monthly, what we call peer group discussions. We have 15 different discussions every month. One discussion for VPs of sales and CROs, one discussion for BDRs and SDRs, another discussion for customer success leaders, so on and so forth. What these peer group discussions are is, again, really just a forum for these individuals across the companies that we work with to come together and exchange ideas and really talk about what's on their mind. What do we do at Sales Assembly? Because we're facilitating all these discussions every month, We're just gathering intel as far as what's timely from a topical perspective. So if we're overhearing through enough of these peer group discussions, like, hey, these 2 or 3 problems keep coming up, right? That informs us. We need to start building a resource or some type of content or training program that helps solves for this. Because if 5 companies are complaining about it, there's probably 50 or 100 that are actually dealing with it, right? That's what gives us the intel to constantly refresh the content that we provide so that, as you mentioned a moment ago, it's always timely and topical. It never becomes stale.
Yeah. Do you have any turf wars, like Bloods and the Crips in there? You got Microsoft and Apple. I'm not sharing anything because my arch nemesis is in the group.
Yeah, we've been asked that a couple times. It's interesting. There have been a few situations where there's been hesitation from some companies to get involved for that exact reason, because their main competitor, is also involved with sales assembly. What we found, though, and it actually is really heartening, is that once you get, especially at the leadership level, once you get the VPs of sales or the CROs of these companies, you get them in a room together, and it's not just them two, but there's 40, 50 of their counterparts all chatting with each other. They do actually end up playing really well together in the sandbox. We have seen, just an arch nemesis, 2 people that, even outwardly on social media might be going just head to head with each other. You get them in the room in a vulnerable environment when it's just them amongst their peers. You actually do see them saying like, hey, I know what you're doing. We sell to the exact same product to the exact same demographic. We tried that, didn't work for us. Maybe try putting this kind of spin on it and see how that works. So we actually have seen them again play really well in the sandbox together, and I think that speaks to not only the strength of the B2B tech ecosystem as a whole, but just the fact that regardless of whether you're a small company or a big company, a lot of the leaders and individual contributors, of course, but the leaders especially, it's not like they have everything figured out, right? They're constantly learning, they're constantly trying to source best practices and ideas, and they see a peer community like the one that we built as part of Sales Assembly. It's just a great value add, a great forum for them to be able to do that.
Yeah. So what are some timely topics you've recently covered? What are some little pearls of wisdom our listeners could pick up?
Oh man, a lot of topics that we've covered over the past quarter, as you can imagine, have revolved around the efficiency of new logo sales teams, transitioning account executives from closers to maybe full cycle reps. Expansion revenue has been a big priority for essentially every company right now, with new business kind of slowing down over the past couple quarters. And then a lot of conversations around transitioning back to meeting clients and prospects in person, which, to old fogies like you and I, it's like, oh, well, that's easy.
What'd you
Yeah.
come? What?
Yeah,
Oh
it's like,
man, I
well,
gotta end this thing.
you and I both are what, 30, 31, right?
Man, I'm gonna be a grandpa next month. Oh,
Yeah, I was gonna say you look great for 35.
oh,
But
whew.
just the opportunity, or I'm sorry, this drive to meet people
Yeah,
back in person. If you're a sales rep that has 5-6 years of experience, by and large, you've never really done things in person before.
right,
Everything that
right.
you've done has been 30-minute Zoom increments. So training people up on, the fundamentals of God, like how do you host a happy hour with 3
Hmm.
or 4 people for, an hour and a half, like stuff like
Hmm.
that you and we probably have the muscle memory to go and execute that. A lot of these reps never had to do anything like that before.
Right. How do you maintain the in-house expertise? I mean, it sounds like there could be a whole lot of topics coming up. And I mean, I can talk about a lot of things. I don't know if I can talk about 3 things a week
Yeah.
and eh, ongoing and add value. So how do you maintain that level of excellence on so many different topics?
Yeah, we're fortunate enough to not only have a really amazing team, our product team, led by a woman named Alex Mislon, is uh is fantastic, but we also have the opportunity to leverage the community that we built. So yeah, I mean, facilitating 3, 4 live training sessions every week, not super scalable for a 14-person company, which we are if we did want to build and facilitate everything in-house. What we've done, what's made us successful over the past 5 or 6 years, is leveraging other operators and subject matter experts in the space and the ecosystem that we exist in. So if we know that a sales, a customer success, or a revenue leader from one of our member companies might be the best subject matter expert on XYZ topic, we'll collaborate with him or her so that they could develop the content and present it back to our community. And the benefit there is it adds an additional layer of credibility to the audience because they see someone who's representing an organization that has already achieved a demonstrated level of success coming in and sharing what's worked for him and her, being able to say, not only here's how I built what I built, but more importantly, I'm still in the role. I'm an operator just like you. Here's what I'm planning on doing over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months as it relates to the topic at hand.
Mm-hmm. And so y'all have a flat fee per company per year, right?
Correct.
Could a small business, that's looking at Sandler or Miller Hyman, whatever, and maybe they don't quite have a methodology, but some of those trainings can be tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Could they put that off and maybe get what they need from your community and maybe develop their own methodology through being a member in your program versus doing both? See what I'm saying?
Yeah, while again, to be clear, we're not going to replace a methodology. We have
Sure.
had a lot of our member companies do exactly that, where they have achieved, again, a significant level of scale, maybe doing 50 to 100 million in revenue. And they have enablement leadership internally that says exactly that. Like, look, I don't want to go out and pay 6 figures, to bring in to implement this methodology, and then after it's implemented have the people just like go away and say like, great, you're on your own for now. I want to build my own methodology because I could piece together some of these components. I know what the best practices are. Hey, sales assembly, if you could provide the skill development, again, it ties into each of these components of the methodology that I'm going to build. We do see a lot of our member companies doing that rather than making such a significant investment in a Sandler or Miller Hyman or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. So for those that maybe, well, I guess kind of the same thing, same sort of question would be, I mean, there's big training around go-to-market and account-based marketing. And I mean, that's maybe it's the wrong term, but I mean, those are methodologies as well, right?
Yeah, methodologies are more strategies, right? People will come up with, organizations will come up with, an ABM, an account-based marketing strategy, or an account-based sales strategy. And that is also another area that we're not necessarily going to touch because, again, we're not going to get too company specific. We're not going to come into your organization, diagnose, what might be missing and say like, hey, you need to build this kind of strategy. Again, what we're really going to focus on is, those consistent threads that connect any go-to-market organization, regardless if you're primarily an inbound motion or an outbound motion. Do you have full cycle sales reps or a big team of BDR, SDR teams, and then the team of closers? Whatever the case may be, all those folks need to be proficient at their respective roles. And again, that's where sales assembly is going to be able to add some value.
Right. Because I'm thinking along the lines of ABM and GTM, the same situation where somebody is at a decent run rate. They're trying to formalize some things. I would imagine if somebody is a good student and shows up and engages in your community, they could start to pick up the pieces and parts that they need to formulate their own methodologies. And probably I'd imagine through networking, somebody's probably, hey, look, I'll share with you our plan, and they can. So again, $100,000 for big sales training over here, $50,000 for some acronym training over here, versus yours being less than all of those. They can probably start to put together their own, as long as they're applying themselves. I mean, is that fair to say?
That is fair to say. That's a benefit of not only what we do, the nature of what we do being ongoing in nature and perpetual. It's not just one time. It's not just, hey, let's build this and let's leave. No, it's week after week. There's always something new that we're offering, that we built for the ecosystem of companies that we serve. And it's also a benefit of having a really fantastic member success team here at Sales Assembly, dedicated headcount, where their whole job is to make sure that the companies that we work with, the individuals, both leaders and practitioners within the companies that we work with, that they're getting all that they need through the Sales Assembly platform.
Yeah. So do you have like a trial or a demo, or how do people get started?
Yeah, so while we don't offer trials, what we tend to do is, given the fact that what we, our product, so to speak, is live training, right? We want to make sure that folks have exposure to the quality of what we do. So we always like to lead with like, hey, if your biggest need right now within the organization is around your account management team, great news, because we're doing 3 to 5 sessions every week, we're always going to have something right around the corner that's built specifically for account managers or account executives or frontline sales leaders. So we do like to make sure that people have some visibility into the deliverable that they can expect. And then, yeah, absolutely being able to walk people through the tech-enabled platform that we build, as far as like, okay, if this was to make sense, and if you vet the quality of our training, which we know is going to be top tier, here's how an organization like yours would actually be able to engage with Sales Assembly at the tactical level.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. And it's just salesassembly.com, right?
Yep. Yeah. Simple and straightforward.
Very nice. So, you mentioned recession or slowing economy, expansion revenue. What is happening? What's the advice you're giving your members as we approach the midway point of 2023?
Ooh. I'm not one to to give advice, mainly because I think I don't think it would be worth very much. Understanding that nobody has a crystal ball, right? And how are you going to be able to determine when the headwinds that we've been facing might pivot back into tailwinds? The one thing that I would recommend from a leadership perspective is just continue to be transparent with your team as far as the state of the business in general, what you've done, what you're doing, what you plan on doing. Just give them that consistent visibility, because in the absence of visibility, if there's a vacuum of information, it's human nature for people to fill that vacuum with worst case scenario type of thinking. What does that lead to? Individual contributors on your team who you need producing at the highest level, spending a couple minutes looking around for jobs on LinkedIn, updating their resume just in case they're impacted by a reduction in force a few weeks or a month from now. So as long as you're able to provide some level of visibility as far as the health of the business to sort of assuage some of those fears, right, across the organization, that'd be one piece of advice I'd highly encourage leaders to take action on.
Oh, you mean the ubiquitous transparency, open and honest dialogue that everybody has on their mission statements and value statements on their conference room wall?
Yep, actually living up to those. Yeah, it'd be,
Damn.
that would be nice.
You mean walk the talk? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, who'd have thunk it, right?
Oh man, crazy. All right, good stuff. So Matt Green, co-founder, CRO, Sales Assembly. Thanks for coming on the show, man. It's been great.
Thanks for having me, Wes. This was fun.
All right, man. Have a good day.
You too.